All right, it is 1 o'clock on the West Coast. It is HugNation time all over the world. Before we get started, let's just take a moment, say grace, have a blessing, let go of the day, and surrender to the moment a little bit. Thank you, universe, for all of our blessings. Help us to see all the gifts in our life. Help us to focus on the joy, the people, the love, the opportunities, the running water, all the sights, smells, tastes that we get to experience. Help us to appreciate those experiences and live in gratitude. Amen. All right, welcome. It has been quite a week for me. If you haven't been following along on the blog or Facebook or anything like that, it was Valentine's Day since our last meeting, rendezvous. And hopefully you wallowed in love like I did. We talked about last week and the week before about making Valentine's Day and even the month of February about love, whether it was radical self-love like Gala Darling talked about, and or just about love in the way all of your relationships run. In the way that you love your family, your partner, your neighbors, and your enemies. So, I was going to talk this week about an experience that I had where I went on Valentine's Day. Let me take a step back. So, when I was in college, I studied psychology. And when I graduated, I had the intentions of going on to graduate school, but they recommend getting some experience in the field. But there's not a lot you can do without a graduate degree in psychology. But one of the things you can do is work at like a group home. So I worked at a place called the Boys and Girls Treatment Center in San Diego. It's changed names now, but and I worked in a cottage of 12 boys aged 6 to 12. Is that right, 12? I think it was between 10 and 12, kind of a fluctuating group. Some of the guys were there the entire time I was there, sometimes just for a little bit of time. But and they lived there, they spent the night, and so I would come in and there was 3 shifts of people, so we had 24-hour help there. And it was an extremely challenging job. Not in that it would challenge my mental capacities, it was challenging in that it challenged my patience and my ability to keep my head on straight. These were kids that were what they would call, it's basically like a lockdown facility, and the kids were pretty violent. They had almost no impulse control and often would, act out to the point that it was pretty common to have to restrain a kid, which sucks, but there's not a lot. I mean, you don't have a lot of other options, but we had trainings on how to do restraints, like these kind of humane ways to hold a kid so that they don't hurt themselves or other people, but oh God, that sucks. Anyway, while I was there for about 2 years, and 2 years in group home years is a lifetime. By the time I'd been there 2 years, there was very few people that had been there that long. There's certain kind of saints that make a career out of it, but most people go in for a few months or half a year and then finally just get beat down. Because one, there's the violence, and no matter how patient and loving you think you are, it's amazing how being spit in the face will make your reptilian brain kick in and suddenly just kill you. There was, I mean, that in and of itself was a good experience to see how my mental state could get revved into there were times when I was restraining a kid where afterwards I was like, wow, I lost my cool. That kid was so, I fell into another state where I was angry, and I definitely crossed a line, because I just lost control. I mean, I never hurt anybody, but I got to the point where I could have, and I definitely used more voice than I had to. So there was that, and then combined with the fact that these kids, most of them made very little progress. Day after day after day, the same things, the same attacks, the same things. And it was a thing where I kind of started to think of their parents, or many of their parents, as murderers. Even though the kid was physically alive, the normal life, the opportunities were taken from these children, were killed off in childhood just by neglect or abuse or whatever situations that were inflicted upon these kids. And it wasn't something you can just, put back in. You can't just make the kid trusting and give him, out of nowhere. And so it was an interesting time in my life. It's actually, everything works out for a purpose, and everything works out as it's supposed to. It was that dissatisfaction that steered me away from psychology and eventually got me into the internet when it was a fledgling little puppy. But this experience really made me see that there are multiple ways that you can try to heal the world. One of them is what I would call dark fighting. And that is like this, working with these children. Dark fighting is when you go to the dark corners, the dark places, the dirty stuff that needs fixing and try to fix it. That's soup kitchen, that's putting clothes on people that need it, finding shelter. It's actual, like, the front line work of helping the world is what I call dark fighting. It is emotionally draining to be a dark fighter, and I have utmost respect for them. Now, luckily, as I pondered this, I realized that light spreading also affects the overall equation of what the world is like and how the world is a vessel of love. The overall equation can be affected by dark fighting or light spreading. And light spreading is so much easier on my mental state. So I really started focusing on light spreading, and HugNation was really born from that, of like trying to spread light. And an example would say, if you feed somebody, let's say, what's the old thing? If you give someone a fish, they eat for the day, and if you teach them to fish, they eat for a lifetime. Now, both are important. They got to eat so they don't starve, but you don't want, both of them actually are helpful. Maybe that's not a good example. But anyways, when I started going into HugNation and started doing that, a lot of criticism I got back in the day was that, why don't you do something of value? If you want to help people, why don't you go work at the soup kitchen? And that didn't quite sit that well with me. Yeah, that makes sense, but at the same time, I don't think that's the only way. I don't think, it's not like every effort has to go to the person that needs it the most. That's a terrible formula, I think. I don't think that's, because otherwise you're constantly plugging, the holes in the dam instead of thinking, okay, how can we fix the dam as a large, or how can we fix the dam as a whole concept? It'd be kind of like if somebody was looking at a field and designing a irrigation system, and someone was like, hey, if you want to really help, why don't you get down here on the ground and help me weed? And it's like, well, yes, weeding is important too, but does that make sense? Anyway, so I have done very little of frontline stuff. I've donated money here and there, but not a lot of, getting down and dirty. And part of it is because my experience when I worked with those kids was so spiritually draining and mentally draining. And so I started to equate charity with sacrifice. And there is an idea in, I think it's in the Course in Miracles and other places, of this idea of effortless charity. And that resonated with me because that's kind of how I feel. I feel like there's a lot of things that I don't think of as good deeds, but actually could be construed as good deeds because they are helpful to people or the world, but it doesn't feel like it's not a sacrifice, so it doesn't feel the same way to me. And then, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I had that day where I helped a bunch of people, friends of mine, and I had this kind of like this awareness of like, wait a minute, you can be helpful, you can be charitable without it being a sacrifice. You don't have to go to a dark, dark place for it to be of value. You can still, elevate the overall equation in a way that makes you feel good, that is not a sacrifice. And so I was thinking about that. Lonnie says, change the word service for charity. I agree. And then I don't even know what the differences in definition is, but let's just say, to me it all goes back to gifting. Gifting, as it was defined and hammered home to me at Burning Man, but then as it goes into other parts of my life, I realized that gifting is kind of that mental, spiritual philosophy, whether it's service or charity or whatever, where it breaks down the separation between you and the other. Because when you're gifting, you are, especially when you're doing it from a healthy place, it is not a sacrifice, it is a distribution of energy. And so that's how I talked to a friend of mine about, after I had the day of service, and said, wow, maybe it's possible to actually do wonderful things and it not be so taxing on my soul. The day in question, I actually was working with people or helping people that were family and friends, but it really started made me thinking, maybe I should look into a soup kitchen or something like that. And I started thinking about things my grandpa had said about service and about helping people. And so I was really excited about this idea of kind of non-sacrifice service. And so my friend then called me on Valentine's Day and said, hey, what you doing? It's like, I just went to Costco and filled my car with stuff that I'm going to give away to the homeless downtown. You want to come with me? And I was like, and I got really scared because I've never done that before. And while I'm not afraid of homeless, I am kind of uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do that act, but I also want to make sure I'm coming from a place of love, and I want to make sure that it's a service thing. I don't want it to be like a pity thing, or I don't want it, and I don't want it to be seen that way. And so I had a lot of anxiety and stuff. And but then I said, can we take the Hugmobile down? And he was like, now you're talking. So we took the Hugmobile down, and I'm really glad he asked me, because it's not something I would do on my own because of these insecurities and things. And and so we went down, and we went to this area that we both kind of had in our mind as a place. And there's it's kind of like a little community there. There's in fact even a police little outpost there, like a temporary police place where there's multiple cars, and so it felt very safe to me, first of all. And as we parked and started talking to some people, whether they were volunteers, there was a shelter nearby, or some of the homeless that were in the area, it became clear that this was not some crazy idea. I mean, we were probably, the fifth group that had stopped in that same place that day and distributed things. So it's like, there's almost like a system, and people know what to do, and so we pulled up the place people like got in line, and for the vast majority of the people, they were very orderly and polite. A couple of people, cut in line and took more things than they should have, and, well, not should, but that basically depleted more than their share of resources, which we'll figure out next time. But so all this fear suddenly started just sliding away. One, as I realized it's not that big a deal. There's, it's kind of like systems in place. And then the thing that really made it awesome was that kind of fear of like, I didn't want to be like, oh, you're homeless, you need this. It didn't feel like that way at all. It felt like that gifting thing I just said, where like we were it was material osmosis, where, hey, we are brothers. I have more granola bars than I need. You have less granola bars. I will give you some granola bars. There, let's make this more equal. Who's next? Oh, would you like some granola bars? Or water, or, you know, lip balm, or socks, or whatever we had. And it was, and the exchange was not one of like distributing to somebody who was any lower than me at all. It did not feel like that. It felt, which was so cool. So then then as I started getting more relaxed and talking and joking and laughing with people, and the thing that really blew my mind, not blew my mind, but really kind of like encouraged me, was that almost everybody that came through line looked me in the eye and felt like a brother or sister. You know, not like a lost flock or someone that was doing penance for a mistake or had to, you know, look down and, you know, so, and that's kind of what I was afraid of, that having to deal with that inequality, I guess. I don't know where that came from or where I would have felt that, but it didn't exist, and I didn't feel it, and I just felt like osmosis. Like it was a you know, the love law helped us to equal out our distribution, and it was great. It was awesome. It was really cool. It went really fast, though. I mean, there's definitely a lot of need. We ran out quickly, learned a lot about what we wanted to bring next time, and when it was over, I was like, kind of had an adrenaline rush, you know. And then we started planning on things that we want to do next time. It was very cool. And as soon as we finished, we're like, how can we do more? You know, how can we expand more? And so that's something that I think that we can maybe brainstorm here in chat later, or on the Facebook page or something like that, and try to figure out how other people can contribute. One thing that it's fun to just go down, do it in the HugMobile, first of all. So I'd like to open that up if other people want to join us physically. I also would like to open it up to allow other people to either contribute, if you have used clothes, especially jackets this time of year, although it's freaking warm today. But jackets went very quickly. We brought some, my friend had cleaned out his closet with sweatshirts and things like that. So warm stuff, as well as socks and underwear and shaving kits and things like that. So I kind of, and we'll see, maybe I'm just excited because it just happened, but I would really like to make maybe a monthly jaunt in the HugMobile, just be a part of the Hug Nation practice, and whoever wants to contribute in whatever way could be a part of that. It just made sense. Like as soon as as we were doing it, just kind of like, well, this just feels like a very logical extension of Hug Nation and of my life. People are like, well, who are you guys from, or who are you guys with? And I actually was like, well, we're just friends. You know, it's not a PR thing or something like that. It was just, I don't know. It just kind of feels. It just felt fun and uplifting, and it was nice also to not. Sometimes I feel like church-centered charity feels like a handouty kind of thing, you know. And so I didn't want it to be like, oh, we're doing this as kind of our what's tithing or something like that. I don't know. So we will keep you posted if you would like to be a part. I put up the email if you want to send a gifting@hugnation.com. That will get you in the know, or if we can talk about it on the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/HugNation. And we will try to further. Well, you know what? Let me take that back. This isn't about furthering or growth or progress. It's about a practice. And the reality is, the benefit to the global overall equation was more impactful to me than it was to them. You know, they had a little bitty blip of material niceness and a recognition and an exchange. You know, but for me, especially considering the walls that it broke down in my fears, it was a very significant boost to that global cosmic love equation. And I would like to continue that practice, and as a practice, not as a growth, you know, not as a No momentum, no finish line, just as part of the practice. So hopefully we will keep that going. It is 1:20. It is a perfect time to have a Hug Nation hug, especially since Sarah just joined us. Before we get started, can everyone please type into the chat room the physical location of where you are right now? And if you're watching this on the archive, welcome! Thank you for releasing this energy into your world and feeling these vibrations that are generating in this time and space all over the world, bottling up digitally in this archive, you releasing it and then becoming a part of your world. It's like ripples, ripples, ripples. We've got Tustin, California, Boston, Massachusetts, Rancho Santa Fe, California, from the Pancho Mansion, London, UK, Wayne, New Jersey, Chicago, Gilroy, California, Gardenville, Nevada, Glendale, California, Los Angeles, Hamburg, Germany, woo woo! San Diego, California, Portland, Oregon, Auckland, New Zealand, and Davis, California. Wow, Germany, New Zealand, all over the US. No Canadians today, is that right? Cool. Then we can tell secrets about them. Did you know? Alright, I don't know any secrets about the Canadians. All right. Now, wherever you are right now, grab yourself by the shoulders. Feel that body, that meat-based spaceship that takes you through this universe. Be grateful, be thankful for this shell. But then let's acknowledge that this is just a shell. And as we squeeze these arms, this is not what we are. We are not this body, we are not our story, we are not our identities or our labels. These are all just the window dressings on a much deeper center of loving energy that flows from us. And think about all the people that we've passed this week in our lives, whether that was people that have enhanced our world or gotten in our way, or even just that we've crossed paths with. Maybe even just to somebody that you locked eyes with on the street. And know that no matter what your interaction was on this surface level of stories and egos and to-do lists and obstacles, that deep down, just as you are not that story, neither are they. And even if they're acting from the level of that story, cutting you off maybe, or assigning something for your workload that's all story level stuff. And deep down, if you strip that all away, we are love vibration. We are divine energy. We are cells in one cosmic being. And so as we squeeze our shoulders, let's think of ourselves as squeezing the shoulders of all those other people and just being a part of one single embrace. Free from our identity. Just entities of love. And let's just sit in that love, that connection of love that we share with all these brothers and sisters, whether they know it or not, for just a second or two. Ready? On behalf of Grandpa Caleb, all those love warriors present in spirit, in thought, or on archive, happy Hug Nation. I love you! Thank you so much for being here and adding your energy and vibration